They walk right by us, go to a table on the other side of the room. And Joel's livid. Joel's like, nah, in fact, yes, I'm not staying around. And Joel, like, let's go. So we leave. I said, Joel, let's go back in and say hello. I mean, let them know.
Yeah.
I mean, they saw us. They're being dicks. Let's just go in and say hey and let them know they're being dicks. So we walk back in, walk over to the table and say hello. And Jim Crockett sat back, suspenders. Joe, I just bought your daddy's territory.
I could hear him. He wasn't quite that country, but he didn't have quite that much personality.
Good point, but yeah, I just bought
It's
your
more
dad.
like, I just bought your dad's territory.
Yeah. But he sat back when he did it.
Yeah.
And Joel was like, went back to the room, and Joel asked to have the room so he could talk to his wife in private. I went down, called Vince McMahon.
Well, and a couple other people called Vince McMahon too.
And then I called Paul.
So Paul heard it from you,
Paul
right?
heard it from me.
What was his first reaction?
Well, did he sell Houston too? Did he sell his interest in Houston? I said, I don't know. So I just saw Jim Crockett in the cafe, told Joel, bought his dad's territory. I don't know what it means. And he says, well, who all's there? I said, Jim Ross, and, you know, list off the people. But we hadn't had our, which I've told on my podcast, Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. No, but
Very highly rated. It's almost as good as the Jim Cornette Experience, for those of you.
much bigger. So
I didn't say bigger, I just said better.
okay,
Okay.
no, I'm better.
Well, then I'm bigger. You can't be both.
You're older.
All right, I'll
Okay.
take that.
So we hadn't had our TV meeting yet, which consisted of me, Eddie Gilbert, and Ken Mantell. So we all, you know, get together, and Joel joined us for that as well. But that was the whole thing where JR comes in and tells us nothing's gonna change. Only thing gonna change is name on check. That's it. Ain't nothing gonna change. Brings Crockett in, and Crockett's, hey guys, you know, looking forward to working with you. You keep doing what you're doing a great job. Everybody's got a job. Only thing changes, name on check.
How long was it before everything changed?
Crockett leaves. JR comes back about 15, 20 minutes later, sits down. What we got for TV, boys? We started going over TV, and I think the first name we hit was Sam Houston. And it's like, yeah, I don't know about that, if he's going to be long for this world. You know, I mean, okay. So maybe we need to do something different with Sam. Then we get to Nicola. And then it's like, you know, there's a lot of water. You know, I don't know if that one's going to stick around here, you know, much. But you know, so we get to a third one.
Well, wait, just Baby Doll and Sam Houston had got kicked off of Crockett's plane the year before, because once they got together, they kept making out like high school kids in front of all the boys while we're sitting there on Crockett's plane, and, going, and they looked like anteaters rolling their tongues around.
Yeah.
So they had to fly commercial after that.
Yeah. So, but there was apparently some heat there. So that was two. Then we hit the third one, and Ken Mantell says, he goes, I'm glad nothing's going to change. So that was our first introduction, and you know, JR was just the messenger, but Crockett was.
He had basically heard what everybody had said in the private meeting and was trying to warn you guys. Well, I wouldn't hang your hat on.
Yes.
Wouldn't hang your hat on Sam Houston.
Yeah. So I'd called Paul and I'd called Vince, and I was just at that point, man. I was worried about me. Well, didn't want to work for Jim Crockett. I'd been around him. I'd worked with him 2 or 3 times for those Superdome shows and a couple of special shows that we had. It was oil and water. I don't want to say I don't like him. I don't know him to not like him, but I didn't care for him. He wouldn't be somebody I'd say, from meeting him, being around him, hey, I got to go out and have a beer with that guy.
No. We actually would see Jimmy in Charlotte, or most of the time at the TV taping. I never spent a lot of time around him. He was very dry. But we considered we were on Dusty's team, and Crockett was the boss. Mm-hmm. Crockett was the team owner, but
Right.
Dusty was the coach.
Right.
When you called Vince, also Paul called Vince.
Yes.
Because
Paul called Barnett.
oh well, yeah. Who was at the time was working for.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I called Vince before I called Paul, because I had been talking to Vince.
Yeah.
At that point, and we had been going back and forth about some different things, because Eddie had hooked me up with him, and so my first instinct was survival, and I didn't want to work for Crockett, and I knew at that point in my career I was also looking to move to Dallas to go to work for Watts full time.
Yeah.
So I said, well, that ain't gonna happen, because I don't want to deal with Crockett. So I just called Vince first, and then I called Paul. Paul called Barnett, who, man, oh my boy.
So
Have you heard?
But now here's the thing, because Paul was insulted that he was sitting on top of one of the major cities in either guy's equation. So he's offended that he wasn't consulted. So he leans toward going with Vince, and once again changing booking offices basically. But Watts still had. Who ended up with Watts's piece of Houston, and how did that work? If you can tell it succinctly without drawing a diagram on a sheet of paper.
You're worried about me drawing a diagram?
Well, I'm asking you.
Long story short, I don't know that that ever got sorted. I think that Vince put up the money to pay Watts and paid Watts off.
Okay.
For that.
But then it became a situation where, as Watts once said to Vince, there's only room for one Titan in Titan Sports. Did you ever see Vince McMahon and Paul Bosch being able, with their two completely polar opposite promotional viewpoints and products and et cetera, being able to coexist for very long?
I hope so. I mean, I really tried. I thought that, the initial meetings, Vince had called up there. Barnett, Vince, and Pat Patterson came down to meet Vince the next day. Got on a plane and came down to meet Vince. I mean, to meet Paul in the offices there, and discuss the future. And that's when Paul called Watts, and Watts was avoiding his call. Paul, I believe, sent him a telegram informing him of his notice to go with WWF at the time.
But when Paul went with the WWF, and there was an announcement on television, and et cetera, and the first few WWF shows, you kind of hit on it earlier. Bruno didn't translate to Houston in the 70s. WWF wrestling did not translate to Houston in the 80s. Right. There was a problem with, at the same time as, in Paul's book, he says, at the same time as Vince said, Paul Bosch will always be the pillar of Houston wrestling, they started customizing the show in a different way, and the people started getting a different product, and the first few WWF affiliated shows did not draw as well as, I'm just saying what Paul wrote.
Okay. I'll tell you, okay.
Just real quickly, and I can see that because, for example, Paul said one time there was seven substitutions on one of the cards, because the WWF guys in those days, and I mean, they were doing 350 dates a year, so they were going to miss a bunch of them, and a bunch of them had extracurricular shit going on. Right. But Paul Bosch was a guy who didn't have seven substitutions on his card in a year. Right. And he had them on one show, and he had to be tearing what hair he had left out of his head. And I can't necessarily see Vince McMahon wanting to change his promotional philosophy that he used for his blueprint all over the place for one city to make it different, to give them what they were used to.
Well, but he was willing to do that. And he was willing to record TV in Houston and make that a part of it. Let me explain what happened.
Okay.
Okay. We made the deal with the WWF. Vince sent a guy down, Bob Dean, put him on an airplane that day. I met him at Intercontinental Airport, now George Bush, and got tapes. I mean, 2 big bags full of tapes of just tons of stuff.
All the stars.
WrestleMania 3, which had just taken place a few weeks before that. All this other stuff. Now our first card, our first headline match, is the return match from WrestleMania 3. Randy Savage versus Ricky Steamboat, which people time, oh my God, greatest match of all time.
Yeah.
So Vince says, air whatever you want. If you want to air Hulk Andre, air Hulk Andre. I'd rather you didn't, but whatever you want. Guys, here's tapes. You do what's right for Houston. I had been putting the shows together with Ed Worthington up until that point. So now,
the director from Channel 39.
Correct. So now we're teamed up with New York, and we've got all these tapes. And Paul decides, you know what? That match was so great. I thought that match was so great. We're going to run it in its entirety to open the show. First week. So the first week, open the show. Randy Savage versus Ricky Steamboat from WrestleMania 3 Pontiac Silverdome. Oh my God. Now you're going to get the return at the Coliseum in 5-6 weeks, whatever it is. We go to week 2. That match was so great, I think people want to see it again. He runs it again.
Okay.
We go to week 3. I don't think anybody's ever going to get tired of seeing that match. He runs it 3rd week in a row. Now, at this point, I'm going to WWE to meet with Vince about my future. So I go to Worcester, Mass, and I go up there for TV, and I'd gone out to San Diego TV. And Vince says, what are you guys doing for the Houston TV? And he says, do you have run sheets? And I did. And I said, well, here's what we've done. He says, well, what the hell is this? So that's what we've run. But it's the same match every week. Why? You have to ask Paul. I thought you did the TV. Paul kind of took it back. And Paul's formatted in TV. So Vince blows a gasket. Calls them and says, Bruce will be writing the television from now on with my approval. He'll submit them to me ahead of time. And he'll still be in Houston, and he'll edit the shows every week. But I want to approve them before they go out. So it gets back to Paul. Now, I don't know who would get this back to him.
I have no idea who would want to do the
but
scoops
that Bruce had buried, Paul to Vince. And Paul doesn't know what he's doing, which those words never, ever came out of my mouth, any way, shape, or form. So I had done my deal with Vince. Vince tells me, he says, I can't lose you in Houston yet. I need to make that transition clean. And if it takes you staying in Houston 3 months, 6 months, a year, I'm going to need you to do that for me. I will pay you. You'll still do this, but I need you to make that work because Houston's important to me. So I get back, I walk into the office, walk into the nephew's office there, hey, I'd like to work out my notice. Now, here's Vince's standpoint. I said, but he says, as far as I'm concerned, you can leave right now. Is there some heat here? Is there something?
Is there heat?
Yeah.
I can feel it. It's not scalding, but it's there.
So, then he tells me as well, because you're up there telling everybody up there that Paul doesn't know what he's doing. So, I guess you're the big television writer now, so you're gonna write it, and I guess we'll talk to Vince. Okay. So I go in the other room and call Vince, and
so Jimsy has stirred up a hornet's nest in the office once again.
And Vince gets on the phone with him right then, says, "Hey guys, not what happened. Here's what happened." Tells them what happened. Which they're in Houston. Their shit's changing now. The kid is was going to be writing TV, and they felt that I'd gone behind their back, which I didn't. I just simply showed him what he asked me to show him, and it was going to come out. I mean, you run the exact first 3 segments of the television show with the exact same match, which, by the way, is the match you're promoting for people to buy tickets to come see.
Yeah, that's the part I didn't agree with. It was a great match, but if you wanted to pay to see it anyway.
Right, and so I'm sorry, that's got a lot to do with why people didn't buy tickets to that first one. And when you talk about no-shows and people not showing, well, that's fair, and I'm a big proponent of there's no excuse for no showing a card at all. But those people were never advertised for the most part, the people that no-showed. The main events all showed, the top matches all showed. But a lot of times those undercards, and they would send out those program inserts, and those would be wrong. So, you know, it's like you're looking at it, and Steve Lombardi's not here, or whoever. And
well, that may have been a benefit. I'm just kidding, Steve. I love you.
no, you don't.
No, come on. In Paul's book also, the story.
I'm the representative in Paul's book.
Well, the way he tells it also was that when they had the initial meeting with Vince and they worked the numbers on who was going to be getting what, they didn't think it was going to work, but Vince assured them that the gates would be much bigger than what they were used to, et cetera, et cetera. So when it didn't come to pass that way, they went to Connecticut, Paul and Peter, the nephew, to try to renegotiate, revamp the arrangement or whatever, felt they had come to an agreement, went back to Texas, and Vince called him a couple or 3 days later and said, you know what, I'm ixnaying the whole thing, the whole deal's off.
No.
Okay.
Not accurate. They did come to Connecticut, did work out a deal where Vince paid off Watts, Vince paid off all of their things that they needed to get paid off, and agreed to give them each a salary. A nice salary. More than I was making. Okay?
Well, yeah, but you'd practically work for free anyway. Go ahead.
Exactly. No, I know, no kidding. So part of that deal was that they were to turn the ticket office in Houston into a Ticketmaster outlet, that they would sell more than wrestling tickets and it would become an outlet, and that they would bring the staffing to speed and ask Paul to do a lot of different things and ask the nephew to do a lot of different things. So when I go down there to meet with them on this, I said, no, the salary is just basically paying us for you guys to run Houston. We're not, if you want us to do all this extra stuff, you're going to have to pay us more. I said, but that's what the salary's for, is to get you guys to do all this other stuff. To do those things. And it's like, no, we're not going to be able to do that. So it's like, well, what do they think that they're getting paid for? I was like, to run Houston. I was running Houston. And now I'm paying these guys an exorbitant salary because I want to establish a Ticketmaster outlet and I want to establish all these other things. They said they could do it and that they would do it. Now they say no. I'll just run the damn thing myself. This doesn't work. They called and said it doesn't work. About, I don't know, maybe an hour goes by and the nephew calls back and says, I told Paul your decision and we were wondering if we could possibly just do one last show and Paul retire. Go out in style.
Which
and Vince agreed to do that.
Took place
August
on
28th, 1987.
August 28th, 1987.
I remember it well.
Which sold out to Coliseum with about 12,000 people, a couple thousand turned away. That was the last Houston wrestling sellout, pretty much.
Yep, sure was.
I mean, it was this last, not only it was the last Houston wrestling show, but it was, with the exception of pay-per-view in the boom years of the Monday Night Wars, that was the last time Houston, a big building, sold out for wrestling in Houston for anybody.
No, it sold out quite a few times.
During the Monday Night Wars, that period of time.
Yeah. Okay. They just did a few shows there that sold out. But yeah.
Who's selling out these days at a 12,000 seat building?
It's 18,000 seats. It's Toyota Center.
Well, there you go. Who's selling that out these days?
Okay, they are.